We did post a vlog prior to the implementation of the Privacy Directive in Italy. Now that it has been implemented, has anything changed? The answer is no so far. We still have to wait for the decision from the Italian Data Protection Authority. In the meantime, let's look at the issue from a more international perspective. There is still a lot of confusion, and such confusion stems from a dual interpretation of the e-commerce directive as amended by the cookies directive. Under the previous version of the e-commerce directive, the storing of information on the user's terminal was allowed provided that the user was granted a right to refuse, and provided, of course, that the user was provided with sufficient information about the data processing that would have been carried out. Under the new text, the storing of information is allowed upon condition that the user provides his or her own consent. So the reference is more to consent rather than right to refuse. So what is the change? The change is not very clear, and this is also due to the fact that the cookies directive maintained the Rule 66, whereby there is still a reference to the right to refuse. There is also a specific reference to the fact that the consent can be expressed through browser settings under certain circumstances. The Article 29 Working Party clearly stated in its latest opinions that the directives should be construed as requiring specific and informed prior consent. It also mentioned that the consent through browser settings can be admitted only in very limited circumstances. Actually, in some cases it should not be considered at all. This because the average user is not really capable to use and master the browser settings. And this also because the consent through a browser may be considered also as an implied consent for all future users without any information being provided. And also because the consent through browser settings does not award any protection against the respawning, particularly through flash cookies. On the other hand, on the political side, the approach from the Commission has been less direct. And by way of example, always on the political side, the EU rapporteur of the directive specifically mentioned that if prior consent was required, it would have been clearly stated in the same text of the directive. This view was shared by 13 member states that published a document on this point. So there is still a regulatory asymmetry that is reflected in the different implementation of the directive in the various member states. In certain member states, like for instance in France, there is a strict opt-in requirement. In others, we can say there is still an opt-out system, while other countries try to find a common compromise. For instance, in the UK, although we can still say there is an opt-in requirement, there is the possibility to express an implied consent. Other countries applied opt-in, but did not follow up with any sanctions against those that do not comply. At the same time, the self-regulatory efforts failed to reach a widespread consensus in Europe. Your Online Choices, the system that was developed by the Internet Advertising Bureau and European Advertising Standards Associations, had not been approved by the Working Party, which considered that as another way to apply a system based on opt-out. Also, the Do Not Track system, which were developed in the US, failed to reach a full consensus within the Commission, which initially heavily supported such system. This because, very recently, the Commission said that the Do Not Track has been too much watered down. There are still diverging opinions on default settings and what can be done without consent. So there is still a risk that those that comply with self-regulatory efforts in Europe will have a delta a delta of lack of compliance with the European and local implemented legislation. So they will have to do a little bit more. So within this context, what is going on in Italy? I'll let you know that in the next post. Thank you.